Now, a very warm welcome to everyone who is joining us on this wonderful Tuesday afternoon or morning, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining us for this session of Euraccess ASEAN Meet My Lab. My name is Susanne Rantzow-Vasu. I am part of the Euraccess team here in Southeast Asia, and I'm joined by my colleague Jenny Elmacro. Now, we are part of Euraccess worldwide, and our job is to connect you, our researchers here in Southeast Asia, with your counterparts in Europe and in fact across the world, because what we want you to do is to come together, to share ideas, to find out what each other is doing, and hopefully to have ideas on how you can work together. This is why we created the Meet My Lab session, a virtual meeting point for you to learn about each other and to explore opportunities for collaboration. In today's Meet My Lab session, we are zooming in on one of Europe's heavyweights when it comes to science, research, and innovation. We're going right in the heart of Europe and we're looking at Germany. More specifically, we want to put the spotlight on engineering and computer science. So we have prepared for you an interactive session. We do hope that you will make use of the chat function. Whenever you hear something interesting, you want to ask a question, please type us a little message and we will make sure that your question is being addressed. In the session today, we will first hear an overview of the German research landscape with, as I said, a focus on engineering and computer sciences. And then you will also have the opportunity to hear and explore with our speakers some of the opportunities to join forces with European collaborators. We have three speakers today. We're starting off with Mr. Christian Rabel. He is working for the German Academic Exchange Service, which you probably know better as the DAD. Mr. Rabel is based in the regional office in Jakarta. We will then hear from Professor Dr. Wolfgang Müller-Wittig, who is the CEO of Fraunhofer Singapore. Fraunhofer, of course, one of the leading research institutions in Germany and the world. And we will then hear from Professor Dr. Ulf Schlichtmann from the Technical University of Munich, TUM, who will join us a little later on. Now, but before we start the session, it is my pleasure of introducing you to our very first speaker, which is Dr. Thorsten Klausing, who is the head of Division Science and Technology at the German Embassy here in Singapore. Dr. Klausing.
Oh, thank you, Susanne. Yes, as you already mentioned, Germany is one of the leading places for scientific research in the world. And this is particularly true for engineering and computer science, but also for many other fields of research. And of course, you can only maintain such a leading position when you engage in international cooperation, when you go beyond your own borders. And therefore, all research institutions in Germany have put a lot of effort in, particularly during the last 10 years, in intensifying their international collaborations all around the world. And the region of Southeast Asia has played quite an important role in this context. And speaking here as a representative of a German embassy, I would really like to highlight that these endeavors, this quest for cooperation, is very much supported by our federal government. Last year, our government adopted policy guidelines on the Indo-Pacific region. And the main point in this policy guidelines is that we need more cooperation with the countries in this region, and not only with the big countries in the Indo-Pacific region, but basically with as many countries as possible. So in particular with the ASEAN member states. And even though this is a political document, which covers all aspects of international relations, it very much singles out science and research as particularly important areas where we can gain a lot from more cooperation. So there is a huge interest on our side in seeing more cooperation projects pop up between German and European researchers on the one hand and researchers from the ASEAN region on the other hand. So I would also like to stress that we as German embassies here, together with the German Academic Exchange Service, are very happy to help any researchers who are interested in cooperating with Germany. We have in our embassy in Jakarta and here in our embassy in Singapore, people who specialize exclusively in science and technology, and they will be very happy to assist you in any questions that you may have in the area of research cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Klausing, for your warm words of welcome. And as we heard, a lot of interest from the German side to join forces in science and innovation with researchers and research agencies here in Southeast Asia. And I'm seeing that the researchers are coming into the session. I see a lot of familiar faces. Again, a warm welcome to all of you. And I'd like to specifically say hello to everyone who's joining us from the ASEAN, the Asian Science Diplomats today, specifically Glenn Banaguas. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And as I said, we're having an interactive session. So please, everybody, make sure to send us your questions in the chat box, in the Q&A box, and we will make sure we channel them to the panelists. Now, I think it is time to open our session with our first speaker, the first of our three panelists, Mr. Christian Rabel, who works for the DAD in the regional office of the DAD in Jakarta in Indonesia, and he will introduce us to the German research landscape. Christian, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Susanne Renzo-Wassow. Also, thank you to Dr. Klausing for the kind introduction and a warm welcome. Good afternoon or good evening to everyone who joins here from all over Southeast Asia. Thank you also for the opportunity to speak here at this occasion. My name is Christian Rabel. As Susanne said, I work at the regional office of the DAD in Jakarta, and I will give you an overview of the German research landscape. Just before I begin, let me say a few words about the DAD. This is a membership organization of the German universities, so I do not represent a research performing institution or one single university, but so to say the whole of the German universities. Now let me share my screen with you. So I will start with some key facts about the German research landscapes. I will then present to you the main players in the German research landscape, who does actually do research in Germany. I will say a few words about research policy. I will introduce some funding organizations for research, and I will highlight some funding programs, but will not go into detail there. What I'm not going to do today is to introduce you to a specific field of research. All right, some facts about research and development in Germany. 3.1% of the German GDP in 2018 was spent on research, so that's a quite significant number. There are around 400 higher education institutions in Germany. That includes universities, universities of applied sciences, but also colleges of music, art, and film. And at these research institutions, there are more than 1,000 public and publicly funded research institutions all over Germany. So it's a quite significant number, with an additional 15,000 research companies, mostly in the industry. Approximately 40,700 patent registrations were handed in worldwide in Germany. That's 5th place worldwide. It's a very high number. So you see that Germany is an excellent player in innovative research. Now, who does what in the German research landscape? There are basically 3 pillars of research in Germany. The first one are, of course, the higher education institutions or the universities. Apart from them, there are also the non-university or government research institutions I will go into a bit more into detail there. Plus, there is also industrial research, which makes up about 2/3 actually of all the budget for research and development. As I said, there are 400 higher education institutions in Germany. Around 156 of them are authorized to confer doctorates. Maybe one important thing to know about the German universities is that they are more level than in other countries. So we do not have these big discrepancies between the top universities that outnumber or that outshine all the other universities. It is a more leveled field of universities in Germany. Of course, there's the Excellence Initiative in Germany. There are universities receive more funding for outstanding and excellent research and education, but in total, it's a more leveled field. There are almost 28,000 international doctoral candidates enrolled in German universities at the moment. And there is 48,000 international academic staff, including more than 3,000 professors at those institutions. In total, 144,000 people work in research and development, including 112,000 researchers. Now let's come to the non-university research institutions. There are 4 big players. They're often called the Big Four. And that's the Max Planck, the Leibniz Association, Leibniz Gesellschaft. There are 93 institutions under this umbrella organization. There is the Max Planck Society or Max Planck Gesellschaft, which has 86 institutions. There is the Helmholtz Association with 19 centers throughout Germany. And finally, there is the Fraunhofer Society, which Professor Müller-Wittig will present in more detail. Fraunhofer has 72 institutes in Germany. Apart from that, there are also federal research institutions in Germany that work for the German government or for the German state. Plus, there are on the level of the individual Länder or 16 German states, also 163 research institutions. Now, what's the difference between these umbrella organizations, between these research performing institutions? Let's come to an overview first, so you can differentiate them between basic research and applied research, more or less. You can also differentiate them between where the funding comes from. So you can see the Max Planck Society is the one that is most into basic research among the 4. It receives mostly public funding. The Fraunhofer Gesellschaft, on the contrary, is more into applied research, and much of its funding comes from the industry, comes from private sources, while the Helmholtz Association and the Leibniz Association are, so to say, in between basic and applied research. Now, going into detail, the Max Planck Society, as I said, has 86 institutes all over Germany, and you can see a very high percentage of international researchers. More than 52% of the researchers are of international origin. Max Planck performs basic research in all fields of science. It has a very person-centered approach. That means that outstanding researchers from all over the world are invited to build centers or research groups on a specific topic, and then they have a lot of freedom to decide who's going to work at these centers, what are the topics that research is being done on. So it's centered around outstanding researchers. As you can see, that's quite a successful approach, because 80 Nobel laureates have originated from the Max Planck Institutes. Also last year, 2 researchers that won a Nobel Prize were working at Max Planck Institutes. The second of the big four is the Leibniz Association, which has 93 institutes over Germany, also with a big percentage of international researchers of around a quarter. The important thing about the Leibniz Association is that it is for knowledge transfer in politics, science, business, and the society. It is active in all fields of science and research, including the humanities and the social sciences, but also the natural sciences. But it does not only have research institutes, but it also has libraries, archives, research museums that try to bridge the gap or that try to communicate the findings of science and research to the broader society, to decision makers, and to a general public. The third of them, the Helmholtz Association, is the one that gets the biggest part of public funding. It has 19 research centers in Germany, and also a big number of international researchers with more than 10,000. Helmholtz Association does research that is very costly. It aims to solve the grand challenges of society, science, and the industry. So it has 6 main research fields in the natural sciences, biology, and medicine. There are energy, earth and environment, health, aeronautics, space, transport, matter, and information. And Helmholtz also has large-scale devices and infrastructure that are very costly and therefore are not available at all universities, for example. It exists since 1995, and 400 patent and property right applications annually speak for its importance. And last but not least, the Fraunhofer Society, with 72 institutes and 20,600 staff members, does application-oriented research for industry and society in the priority fields of health, safety, communication, mobility, energy, and environment. And 70% of the research are contract research for industry and the government. Industrial research is also an important pillar of research in Germany. There are roughly 15,000 research companies, which make up 69% of all the research funding in Germany. The most innovation-driving sectors are the pharmaceutical industry, electronics, automotive engineering, and mechanical engineering. So basically the industry that Germany's reputation is built on, with the biggest tradition and history in Germany. And as you can see, many people work in these research companies. 253,000 researchers are employed or active in the private sector. A few words about the research policy in Germany. As Mr. Klausing already said, Germany's prosperity depends especially on knowledge. So the German government has set up a range of strategies to promote research in Germany, which is, for example, the high-tech strategy 2025, the internationalization strategy, and an excellence strategy for higher education in Germany. Our fields of future relevance in the high-tech strategy 2025 are, for example, health and care, sustainability, climate protection and energy, urban and rural areas, mobility, and safety and security. So this means that these are areas of research that are prioritized. In total, there is, I think, more than 330 programs at the moment. So that strategy is channeled into a wide range of different funding programs, support for startups, for example, support for study programs for universities, but also activities comprising dialogues, comprising conferences, networking opportunities between industry and research, for example. So it's a broad strategy. A very important part of that is the knowledge transfer from industry to science. And just some elements of that are the creation of networks and clusters, so bringing together experts from industry and society. Also the exchange of staff, the promotion of junior researchers who can work in industry but also in the academic world, the utilization of patents, and support for startups is also a very important part of that strategy. Now, talking about research funding. As I said, around 3% of the GDP goes into research and development in Germany. About 30% of that comes from tax money. And more than 33,000 international researchers are supported with scholarships. So who supports scientists in Germany? There is, for example, the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. It's a very important foundation for the support of international researchers and scientists. There is the organization that I represent, the German Academic Exchange Service, or DID in short, and there is the German Research Foundation, DFG. Now, what do they do? The Alexander von Humboldt Foundation awards scholarships. It supported 810 scholars in 2019 from all over the world. It spent 163.7 million euros for that purpose. It has a network of 30,000 fellows all over the world that are organized in 111 alumni associations. The scholarships are not only in one particular field, they are in all fields of science and research, spanning from the natural sciences to engineering and the humanities. I'm not talking about specific programs here. I will show you where you can find more information on that later. The DID funded is also a scholarship. Among other things, it's also a scholarship organization. It funded scholarships for 145,000 scholars in 2019, both from Germany and from countries all over the world. It has a budget of almost 560 million euros. It awards scholarships and grants both for individuals and also for projects, for example, for institutional partnerships between universities. It has 72 offices worldwide. One of them is in Jakarta. Another regional office is in Hanoi, for example. But there are also information centers in Bangkok and in Ho Chi Minh City and an information point in Singapore. The German Research Foundation funds projects. So it awards scholarships and grants for all disciplines and for big costly projects, collaborative projects that are undertaken in Germany or with German partners. Around 33,000 projects were funded in 2019. These projects are interdisciplinary and across departments usually, with a budget of 3.4 billion euros. There are offices in not only Germany, but in 6 other nations worldwide. And yeah, there are different programs for funding international students and researchers. I am not going into detail because there are very many of them. I will show you later where you can find more information, but I would like to highlight some of them. For example, for PhD students, the Max Planck Society has international Max Planck research schools. So if you're interested in doing a PhD in Germany, this might be just the thing for you. You can do your PhD at one of the 86 Max Planck institutes with a duration of 3 years. It's not a scholarship, but you have a work contract and you're paid for it. So you will be part of a team of researchers. You will receive mentoring and guidance, and you will work at one specific institute. So that might be interesting for some of you. On the level of postdocs, For example, the Helmholtz Institute offers the possibility of joining or actually heading a Helmholtz Young Investigators Group. So this is for postdocs who want to lead or set up a research group of their own on a research topic of their own. They also receive training, tailored training and mentoring for that purpose, for example, on leadership. This is for a duration of 6 years, and it includes a minimum of 300,000 euros per year, including expenses for materials, supplies, and investments. So this is for researchers in the second phase of their career. But also for senior scientists, there are interesting opportunities. For example, offered by the Leibniz Association, there is a program for women professors. So for senior scientists who want to spend part of their career or all of their career at a German research organization. This is for a duration of 5 years with the possibility of tenure or permanent employment afterwards. Funding is up to 1.7 million. It's at a Leibniz Association out of the 96 that exists, and it's also in different fields of research. There are many, many more opportunities, but with respect to the limited time we have, I'll leave it here. But I would like to draw your attention to other sources of information where you can get more information. The first information source would be research-in-germany.org, where you find an overview of funding programs of the research landscape in Germany in general, but also helpful information for preparing your stay in Germany, vacancies, PhD positions, and so on. You find information for graduates, PhD students, postdocs, and senior researchers. So it targets different groups of researchers. You can, of course, also access it on mobile devices. And on that website, you can also have a look or download the brochure Funding or Research in Germany, which is especially helpful because there you find what the different research organizations have to offer, whether they have scholarship programs, whether they have grants, or whether they offer the possibility of work contracts, for how long, for what durations, the money value, and so on. So a very helpful brochure for those of you who want to plan into more detail. That's all from my side. I think it's exactly 18 o'clock in Singapore now, and I am now at your disposition if you have more questions.
Well, thank you so much, Christian, for a wonderful presentation. And I think we've just heard what Christian has presented, of course, is only a snapshot, a very brief introduction to the multitude of opportunities that are available. And I really encourage everyone to make use of the website that he has introduced to us, but also, of course, reaching out to the network specifically of the DAD offices across Southeast Asia, because these are really your contact points when it comes to finding out about the opportunities to further your research career in Germany and to build partnerships with German institutions. Now, Christian, there's a few questions coming in. What would be your advice if someone is interested in reaching out to potential collaborators in Germany for his or her particular institution? Maybe what would be your advice, the first 2 steps that that person should take?
It depends a bit on the situation. So maybe you already are in a broader network. Maybe you're part of the same association of experts, or maybe you know other people working at that research institution. So for example, you could make use of contacts you already have. Maybe there are alumni at your institution that did their PhD in Germany. So that would be a first step. Maybe also using contacts from researchers you met at conferences, or you somehow collaborated with. If there are no such contacts yet, you can have a look at the website that I shared, Research in Germany, because there you really find like who does what, who specialized in what. So you can contact departments or clusters of excellence or research groups that are active in your field actually. And then you can just contact them, writing them an email, for example, or follow their activities, maybe do joint activities. In general, the first step would be introducing yourself, writing an email, and then just trying to find out how you could collaborate and then set up a Zoom meeting, for example, and take it on from there.
Thank you so much, Christian. Two more questions. We have one from Guy Hashim, who is wondering whether there is an age limit for industry attachments for research in Germany. And this person is referring specifically to the Leibniz program for women professors. So is there usually an age limit for these programs?
That depends actually on the program. So for the DID programs, we do not have an age limit, for example, but we have the restriction that the last degree, like if you do a PhD, the master degree should not be older than 6 years. So you have to check specifically for the program. Sometimes there are age limits. Sometimes there are these indirect limits, like the last degree should not be taken more than so and so many years ago. And in many cases, there are no age limits at all.
Thank you, Christian. There's two more questions. One, I think is very important because we are presenting, of course, a lot of mobility opportunities, and what we're all thinking about these days when it comes to mobility is the coronavirus. So we have a question from the same person who was wondering, what are the entry requirements to travel into Germany? Is it, for example, sufficient to have a certificate that one is vaccinated? Maybe Dr. Klausing can come in here as well. What are the entry requirements for a researcher that has been offered a fellowship, for example, in Germany and now wants to travel to Germany?
Well, maybe Dr. Klausing can help me here. It's a bit a tricky question because the regulations are different for each country here. So we have people here maybe from Indonesia, Singapore, and different countries, so the regulations might be different. In general, what will be possible from the 25th of June will be to travel to Europe, even if you do not have a residence permit, for example, or a long-term visa, if you have a vaccination pass, and if you have been vaccinated like twice or fully vaccinated with one of the vaccines that's currently recognized by the European Union. That includes, for example, AstraZeneca, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and BioNTech Pfizer. So if you have been fully vaccinated, and if you are not from a country that is classified as a high incidence country or a virus variant country, you can already, starting from the 25th of June, travel to Germany again. But then you have to monitor it actually, because the conditions change. For example, if in one country the cases are rising, it might be that countries are classified differently and you might have to undergo quarantine once you are in Germany. Also, another limiting factor can be the capacity of the visa departments at the embassy, who might not work at full capacity. But I have a feeling that I'm a bit overstepping my boundaries here, and Dr. Klausing can say more about these things.
Well, yeah, basically you are quite right. It very much depends on what country you come from, what your citizenship is, and on top of that, the rules keep changing all the time. So you should really check before, when you have a concrete idea when you want to go, what are the rules at this point of time. For example, if you come from Singapore, which is a country with very low infection rates, there was no problem during all the last months. You could more or less freely travel to Germany. At the moment, what you would need from any place is a test certificate showing that you are negative, or a vaccination certificate showing that you are vaccinated with one of those vaccines, which are also used in Europe. So in principle, I would say that it is not too difficult to come to Germany. There are no special limitations, but then again, it depends on the classification of your country in terms of the rate of infections at the moment. So as the general rules, there are no problems that could not be overcome, but yeah, you have to check each individual case.
Thank you so much. Yeah, of course, it's a situation in flux. We're all hoping, of course, that it's becoming better for everyone in the coming weeks and coming months. The first point of contact, I think, for everyone should be the embassies in their country where they are residents. And then also you should keep an eye on the Robert Koch Institute in Germany. And this is the one where you will find a list that is constantly being updated, classifying countries according to their status, whether they're considered high risk or low risk. But after the session today, we will share this presentation and we will make sure that we add in some information on where you can find information pertaining to each of the different ASEAN countries and your requirements to travel to Germany. So we will make sure you will have some information on that. Now, I think there are, of course, more questions. I haven't overlooked you, but I think we will first move to our next presenter. And our next presenter is, of course, Professor Müller-Wittig. And he is the head of the Fraunhofer Institute in Singapore, which in fact is the first, I think, overseas institute of the Fraunhofer Association. So I hope that he is online now. He was joining us from, there he is, I can see him, wonderful. Professor Müller-Wittig is joining us now, and he will talk to us about the Fraunhofer Society, Germany's research organization for applied research. Professor Müller-Wittig, the stage is yours.
Yeah, many thanks, Susanne. I'm currently not able to share my screen, but I guess it will change many things. Many thanks for having me. Usually it's a physical meeting. I'm missing this so much. So we have to go now virtual. Give me a second for screen sharing. Now it's working. Hopefully right. Yeah. Yeah, I think what can I tell you now about Fraunhofer was already nicely introduced by Christian. I can update perhaps the numbers. Give me a second. Yep. You're not reading my emails now. Hopefully, good. Okay, it's working.
Perfect.
Okay, how long? 20, 15? I don't know. Okay, you stop me. Yeah, many thanks again for the introduction. So I think there are also a lot of young people there. And first I would like to thank my colleague Nicole Comia from headquarters who provided me the more motivational slides, yeah, to come to Fraunhofer. So I would like to start. Yeah, you see, I'm here in Singapore. Yeah, so now it's Marina Bay Sands and more building on sand. So you see already we are in visual computing, and yeah, as usually, yeah, we would like to give also some ideas how perhaps to fade in smoothly into perhaps a career in the science and research community. And I think later Professor Schlichtmann will also give some ideas about this. Okay, some basics, yeah, so that you know why we are here. It's in Germany, it's sometimes mixed up with Frauen, so women. Yeah, it's really a name from a famous inventor, scientist, and entrepreneur. So, and that's the reason why I have to update a bit, Christian. So we are meanwhile 75 institutes. It's growing and growing. Yeah. So, and please don't ask me now in which way I know this or that colleague. You see, it's a quite impressive number. So we have here, yeah, such institutes, and you see it, it's nicely distributed over Germany. Each institute is autonomous, so that means has an own topic. It might be in biotechnology, it might be in visual computing, where I'm coming from in Darmstadt, might be in secure information technology, and it was already introduced by Christian in the landscape, so it's a specific role of Fraunhofer, it's applied research. Yeah, so that means the business model is important, that you provide added value to society and industry. and yeah, external funding as usual. But yeah, as you can imagine, in such phase where COVID-19 is having an impact on industry and economy, this is also currently, yeah, a bit more challenging. But there are definitely also some programs from Ministry of Science and Education in Germany to support now specific research which is COVID related. International, yeah, Susanne mentioned already. So we are here the only affiliation in Asia, in Singapore. So there are others in US due to history since many, many years, and then Chile. I'm always saying incorporation of Fraunhofer overseas is always a bit more challenging. In Europe, it's for beginners. But you see here there are 8 different affiliations outside of Germany. Then there are various levels of overseas activities, starting with senior advisor in Malaysia, some rep offices in Korea or China, and so forth. Okay, I think the world is, yeah, it's everywhere quite similar. Yeah, so we have our challenges of humankind. We have certainly fields of research. I guess you can apply this to your own country. So this is quite similar. Perhaps there are some different environmental conditions, some specific local or more regional challenges you have to address. And you can see here with no surprise that also Fraunhofer is addressing the main topics, and I will go a bit more detail later. And then, since you saw it's 75 institutes, plus also the outside Germany entity, so you're clustering this in some specific groups due to the domain. So it might be information communication technology, it might be production, also industry 4.0, advanced engineering and manufacturing, and so forth. I think it's also quite clear. Then there are, on top of that, some alliances to make it more complicated. Yeah, so to tackle in a multidisciplinary manner bigger challenges. Yeah, so you see here, it's for instance digitization of the healthcare sector. It's specific challenges in the field of the chemical industry. So then various institutes are coming together to forming such alliances. Okay, what stands Fraunhofer for? On the one side, certainly patterns. So certainly Singapore is also not too bad. This is one important part. So certainly if you go to software, it might be a bit more challenging, but such a famous example is always MP3. Yeah, so that means this is definitely an income of licenses for MP3, which is quite pleasant. So that means it's always important to protect your intellectual assets. Now more how to come to Fraunhofer. And there are so many paths. So you can take me also as such an example. I know it's a bit different from country to country. Oh, sorry, that was too fast. From country to country. So it means during your study, typically they are offering such part-time scientific assistance, and that's already where you get in touch with institutes or also research groups at the universities. So it's always quite good possibility to learn, to know each other, and to see in which way also the skill sets which you are acquiring during your study can be applied to the real world, because we looking at the real world problems and are not completely decoupled now with our research. So it's quite interesting. Then you see it, there are other possibilities later when you're doing your bachelor or master or going more on scientific career with PhD. There are many, many entry points, and yeah, okay, I might be one example here in this chart, yeah, so that you are moving then perhaps more away from the byte level. I'm telling this always in that way, and then more into management. But you can also go further towards research, and certainly, which is also happening to a lot of my colleagues, that they are moving over to spin-offs, and some of them are smiling because there have been some exits and they are very relaxed now. because there was a lot of profit. Okay, so that means there are a lot of possibilities to come in, yeah, from early career start, and yeah, there are a lot of possibilities back in Germany to get support. There are some specific sites to give you an idea about the open positions. Yeah, and this is where then the others are coming in, my nice colleagues from the headquarters. So in terms of ranking, we are not too bad. Yeah, so again, it's typically the way that you, on the one side, certainly you can stay with Fraunhofer as myself. Yeah. On the other side, it's such an interim phase where you advancing your career in terms of getting a PhD. And if you wouldn't like to take over a department, then you perhaps going over to the industry, because this is very valuable since you're working already during your time at Fraunhofer with the industry. Good. Who we are. And this is, yeah, I think, yeah, even my colleagues from Germany, from Singapore didn't see this so far. So it's really now the science and research landscape in Singapore. And you see already the players, the AD. Christian already introduced here the possibilities of bridges. On the other side, later, Professor Schlichtmann will give an overview about TUM, but certainly also here the activities at our side. And yeah, you see, we are here. Again, we are here more than 20 years. I'm here since 2001. I saw the evolution of this place in general.
Sorry, I'm still seeing the slide about Fraunhofer alliances. Am I the only one?
Yeah, that's currently the only one for alliances. Do you need
No.
more details?
I can also still see the Fraunhofer alliances.
Really?
Slides. Yes. So I think something. Do you want to stop screen sharing and then?
Yeah, I stop and start again. I'm talking always to the alliances. Oh, God. Okay. Many thanks for the hint. Yeah, I saw wonderful slides. I can tell you. I will start again.
That is what makes the virtual world so exciting. There's always something new. But this is no problem for us. We're all very flexible. Gives us more time to think about the question.
If I only have fun, that's bad, I have to say. Okay, what are you seeing now?
We're seeing that you're starting screen sharing, but we're not seeing your screen just yet.
Yep, just a black screen.
Really?
Appears to be a lag in the slides.
Building up?
Okay. Now we're just seeing participants again.
Yeah, I just stopped screen sharing. Oh gosh, I'm sorry for that. My screen sharing was too fast. Let me check, but it's showing that I'm sharing.
It just says starting screen sharing, but it doesn't. At least on my side, it's not showing anything.
No, it isn't showing anything. Can you improvise, or can you quickly send me the slides? Then we can share it from my side. Oh, now it is. Now we're back. We're seeing the landscape. Exactly. Perfect.
So I'm telling you stories and you don't see the respective image and you are so polite and let me speak. Yeah, that's nice. Okay.
I was impolite. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Okay, so again, that's the landscape here in Singapore. As I mentioned, DAAD and TUM Asia, where Professor Schlichtmann will talk later about, and us. We are here in 20 years, starting with the University Center. If the slides are not changing, please tell me. Yeah, I guess it's always a bit delayed, but hopefully that's showing now our opening with Minister Iswaran, and you see which devices we are using, such augmented displays. And here the fields of research. As I mentioned, it's quite similar all over the world. We are in the field of visual computing, and it's now extended more and more to quantum technologies, quantum communication, cybersecurity, and also now, yeah, hydrogen. But you see here the facets in visual computing. So it's all about visualization, human-centered, interactive visual environments. And I would like to give you some examples later. Here in Singapore, as you know, there are the vertical sectors in terms of industrial transformation maps. That's not so important. Starting, yeah, digitization. Huh? A lot of things. Yeah, digital twin, I think, was mentioned. So it's also, yeah, try not only to have a digital replica in terms of shape and appearance, but also in terms of function. And this is now such a scanning of an orchid. These are the typical marketing possibilities, yeah, to have such interactive environments, walkthroughs. We did it for the new Lakeside Park office of Fraunhofer, Austria in Klagenfurt. These are also possibilities to showcase next generation malls. That was here in Singapore, to get an idea in which way robots can support for the logistics of the last mile. That's near to my heart, art, but quite difficult to get funding for that. But you can definitely, what you also see in the current social distancing and lockdown, all the trends that you have virtual museums and so forth. And this is now then really that you provide high accurate digital replica. You can discover Germany via visual storytelling, discover German Center. Everything what is addressing the visual sense is important, and we can use the high bandwidth of the visual sense to tell stories. That was just happening some weeks ago, a conference in TB research. And here I think the most appealing thing is that certainly it's a web application, you say, nothing special, but it's really running anywhere, anytime, on any device. And even if there is a bit more challenging infrastructure, so that was the possibility to open up to the whole community all over the world, so that on a mobile device, even here, such things could be learned. And I think that was a wonderful experience now. Digital twin, more lab apparatus. This is now something which is getting more and more important. Yeah, industrial training. Frankly speaking, I'm in virtual reality since 25 years, and I never thought that this is coming back in that sense. But as you know, it's getting more and more high quality. It's definitely more affordable. And this is opening up possibilities for collaborative working environments. And on top of that, we're also doing emotion detection. Yeah? Where is the stress, where's distraction, and so forth. It can be applied then in LNG firefighting scenarios. Even here in Singapore, also I was also quite surprised that senior citizens are also open for such technologies. So our colleagues from VCMV school are doing their studies now. As you know, ATM is such a situation where sometimes are some unpleasant colleagues behind you and are impatient. So this can be then in a very safe environment done in such a virtual environment, self-checkout in the supermarket and so forth. Environmental issues, again, to raise awareness. So these are such topics here to provide such interactive environments in a pure virtual way or in an augmented way. Building information modeling. As you know, that's here, also now in Germany, much more important. It's compulsory to submit plans in this format, and this is give a lot of possibilities to use it during the whole value chain. Not only in the design phase, but later also during the construction and later for even the operations. This is one of the projects we are involved in. You see, I talked about the big initiatives back in Germany. It's yeah, COVID-19 related. It's simulation of distribution of such aerosol, and that's together in a big consortium. Sea level rise, yeah, in the field of climate change is a topic. This is a big topic here in Singapore. We're providing visualization and interactive environments. And if you look at us, it's always the three target groups, certainly for the scientists, for the domain experts, but on the other side, you can then also use it for education, for your students. And much more importantly, I think it's to embrace also the public and to provide transparent messages about such changes, to raise awareness, visibility. Yeah, you know it. It should not always be some advertisement of movies and so forth. Okay, that's more optical inspection. This is digital learning. As you know, body worlds, medical schools are allowed to purchase such plastinated specimen, and the student of nowadays is getting an iPad. Yeah, so that means they have their own personal learning environment, and this can be also then enhanced with some augmented anatomy learning environments. That's more research. Yeah, it's definitely in Germany with the big industry, the automotive industry is a big topic. It's for quality management in the production. It's getting more and more important apart from training and so forth.
3 minutes, please.
Okay, fast forward. So that's again more difficult now. Yeah, emotion detection here via such digital setups, but this is something which is important. So from my point of view, and we addressed it already, yeah, how can I come into this and that? The most important ingredient are people. Yeah, network is important, and I would like to share with you. Yeah, we're already introduced into some PhD programs, which are also together with Germany or here in Singapore. And as you know, these people are highly wanted now by the industry back in China. No chance to keep them, but we kept a few. So there are possibilities, to go from typically science career to the industry. But certainly others are moving on to some professorships back in other countries. Then certainly, they are featured. You have always a chance to get famous. Yeah, also at the Facebook page of German Embassy. We're starting also with interns. Yeah, so it's now quite interesting due to the overall situation that you have here interns from German universities, but they cannot go back to Germany at that time, so they can do at the German institution here. There are possibilities to get famous, as I mentioned. So here, typical workspace at home where modeling of the coronavirus was done by my colleague DJ. You get famous in Swiss and engineering and in different languages. So this is quite important that you providing a network. Okay, many thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Müller-Wittig, for showing us the work of the Fraunhofer Association and specifically what Fraunhofer is doing here in Singapore. And as we've heard, there's lots of opportunity to get involved at various levels throughout your research career. Now, we have received a few questions that I would like to share with you, Professor Müller-Wittig. The first one comes from Cheng Yi Lu, who is asking, what is the demand from the industries in Southeast Asia for contract research and services provided by Fraunhofer Singapore? And how can the companies normally finance such projects with Fraunhofer Singapore? Would you be able to give us an answer to this?
Very good point. It looks like a member of my board. Yeah, certainly. In the best case, certainly the companies can provide it by themselves. But as you know, there are a lot of funding programs nurturing collaboration between industry and research. It's not limited to Fraunhofer. It's also where other players from research are coming in. And it was already mentioned by by Christian. So there are also some bilateral programs between countries and Germany, or there are national programs. But I can only speak here for Singapore and certainly also for Germany. There are really possibilities. Yeah, the government is always more and more nurturing such collaboration with specific programs for SMEs, not only the multinationals, yeah, who have their own corp labs, yeah, but there are possibilities, yeah, but certainly it's an issue at the end. It comes always to a budget, but you can also jointly hunt for grants, and in such an ecosystem which was described by Christian. So this is also where programs, especially looking into such partnerships between industry and research.
Thank you so much. There's another very specific question from someone called Guy Hashim, who's wondering whether the Fraunhofer alliances for food industry also include agricultural technology.
You can bet on that. Yeah. No, yeah, it's. I'm sorry that I only scratched the surface now regarding all these topics. Yeah, so I can advise or recommend. So jump into the respective website, and then you see how deep you can dive, and see which wonderful basket of fruits in such an area can be addressed. As I mentioned, there are similar topics all over the world. As you know, also here in Asia, food science is getting more and more important. I guess Professor Schlichtmann will also address now the topic that this food science is also for them quite important, and a lot of research. If you would like to get further information, I recommend just to look a bit into this. Unfortunately, I couldn't address all these things in my slides now.
Thank you so much. Maybe a final question before we invite our final panelists to the stage. So you mentioned there are opportunities of Fraunhofer Singapore, and I guess at all the other Fraunhofer institutes across Germany. You know, when you are receiving a message or an email from someone, what are you looking for? What is the candidate like that you're interested in, that you want to invite to find out more?
Okay, I have a bit different approach. Yeah, certainly, qualification is one aspect. Yeah, so in the domain you would like to work, you should fit into. But you see, also at my side now, I can speak for us jetzt here. So we are multicultural, multidisciplinary team. Yeah, so we have designers, we have modelers, we have programmers, we have user interface experts. So it's quite, yeah, some coming really from art. So this is one aspect. The other aspect is, yeah, this cannot be answered now here. That will be answered in the interview. So I would like to see in which the values and the motivation of such an applicant is fitting into the overall team and enterprise culture. So we definitely not representing here in this ecosystem the respective unit where you can become rich, but you can become enriched due to the, I think, the values we are representing. That means team spirit, flat hierarchies, interesting topics related to the world. And so I would like to see, in which way the people are engaged, and not only using this as one stop for a few months and then jumping on. I cannot read the mind. Certainly we have some technologies, motion detection, yeah. But usually they're staying here for a while, and I think later they have a lot of other options. And this is also the system flux, yeah, that you getting some new wind, getting motivated, getting different view. That's also important for us. And on the other side, they hopefully getting some further qualification, can move on.
Thank you so much. And I think the key message is there are plenty of opportunities, and what I guess everybody is looking for is initiative, right? I mean, we're hearing today the wide spectrum of opportunities, and I'm sure Professor Müller-Wittig, together with his colleagues, are more than happy to respond to any email inquiries that may be coming his way after this session. Now, thank you so much for this. We will now turn to our last speaker of today's session. And our last speaker is Professor Dr. Ingolf Schlichtmann from the Technical University of Munich, TUM, of course, one of the very prestigious universities in Germany, and also with a campus in Singapore. So our last speaker, Professor Schlichtmann, I invite you to share your screen, please.
Thank you very much, Susanne, and very warm welcome to everybody. You should be able to see my screen now.
Yes, we can. Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll try to expand on some of the topics you heard before and give you the university perspective, taking TUM as a representative. And you'll hear keywords again, such as initiative or people are important. What you're seeing here is Happy Freshman. This is Freshman Initiation Day. This is actually 2 years ago, before the pandemic. These days it looks slightly differently, of course. And I would like to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at TUM, meet my lab in that sense, but then also talk especially again about what are opportunities to get in touch with Germany and German researchers. Okay, just some key data. TUM is a fairly large student. We have more than 43,000 students. More than 30% of them are international. We also have quite a few high-ranking researchers. There's a number of Nobel Prize laureates, professors of the Humboldt Foundation, and we're a technical university, so we are also pretty proud of our collaboration with industry, and that brings in a lot of third-party funding, as we call it in Germany, research funds from industry and from funding agencies. We're reasonably well ranked here in the inner circle. You see by different evaluators our ranking within Germany, where we are among the top 3 in all the rankings, and the outer ring shows you our global rankings, where we are also doing quite okay. One thing we're especially proud of is that the Global University Employability Ranking, which is an Anglo-Saxon ranking, and that puts us usually every year among the top 10 universities globally in terms of how employable our graduates are in the job market. This slide here, it's a bit busy. It shows you all the departments that we have and the number of students. I don't want to focus on details. TUM is 51% of our students are in engineering, so we're strongly engineering driven. That's including computer science. And what you see here in dark blue, those are the German students, and in light blue are the international students. And so you can see here, engineering is very international. Actually, my own department, electrical and computer engineering, the majority of our students are international. And for PhD candidates and researchers, the degree of international is even higher than here for the bachelor and master students. So we very welcome, very much open and very much welcome international students and researchers at our university. And to a similar degree, this holds for most German universities. A few research highlights. Of course, we're in Germany. We do have a certain car industry. This is something already 10 years ago when people were not really talking about electrical mobility. We built by 60 PhD researchers were involved, 300 students were supporting that. 21 different institutes across 8 departments of our university. We built one of the first all-electric vehicles. So this was really designed and built from scratch, Mute, the first prototype fully electrical vehicle at TUM. And Wolfgang mentioned before, and Susanna also, we also have a satellite campus in Singapore. So also about 10 years ago, we took the experience from the design of that first electrical vehicle to Singapore, to a large project funded by Singaporean's National Research Foundation, which involved at the peak 100 PhD researchers, where we built an electrical taxi targeted at tropical megacities. So there was a lot of emphasis on things like air conditioning. But we looked at this very broadly. So the research effort was ranging all the way from fundamental electrochemistry, energy storage systems, engineering for energy, the embedded systems for the electronics in the car, the actual development of the car, all the way to a more global system perspective of how you organize traffic and mobility in the future. So that's called TUM Create. It's part of the Create campus in Singapore, which is, as I said, funded by the National Research Foundation. But TUM is not just about automotive. We're a fairly broad university here. Here's something completely different. One of our facilities in the Munich area, where we're generating kerosene from algae, so part of the transition of our society to a more climate friendly future. And the German federal government started some time ago something called the Excellence Initiative, where really very excellent research was funded on a large scale. TUM has currently 4 of such clusters of excellence, as they are called, which are running until 2025. And you can see here again, they're running from energy technology, natural sciences, astrophysics, astrobiology, the origins of life, neuroscience, to quantum science and technology. This is actually another topic which TUM and partners like Fraunhofer that you heard about, or Max Planck, and industry in Munich are emphasizing very strongly. We're building up something called the Munich Quantum Valley at the moment. So there are fairly many research opportunities. What I do specifically in my very own lab, I do EDA, electronic design automation. So we work on mathematical techniques and algorithms, which we then implement as computer software to support and improve the design and analysis of electronic circuits and synthesis circuit systems, specifically analysis, modeling, synthesis, and optimization of the design of electronic circuits and systems, analog, digital, FPGA, and also what we call emerging technologies such as neuromorphic computing for deep learning, photonic interconnect, and even microfluidic biochips. Munich is emphasizing what we call One Munich to position all the different players in the Munich research landscape into an European science and technology hub. So that's, you see here, the major TUM locations, and we have lots of academic partners. Of course, there's Fraunhofer, which has many institutes in Munich. You've also heard from Christian about Helmholtz, for example, DLR. So there are many academic partners. There are very many established industry players, which we are collaborating with at TUM. You might recognize quite a few logos here of both German and international companies. And we're also emphasizing entrepreneurship. So TUM is generating, last year, I think we generated 75 new startups, and some of them have actually grown to be unicorns, having more than €1 billion of market capitalization, such as Celonis. Now, how do you get into the picture? How do you get to be a researcher at TUM or in collaboration with TUM? One specific opportunity we have at TUM is called the TUM Research Opportunities Week, which usually runs in spring, March, or April, where we're inviting people, PhD candidates close to graduation or young postdocs up to 3 years after PhD. We invite up to 50 candidates every year. You can apply for this, and if you're selected, you get travel for 1 week in Munich, where you get to know the city and the activities at TUM. And that also is the opportunity of, once you have participated there, you can apply for a 1-year TUM University Foundation Fellowship, which then would give you, as the name says, a 1-year fellowship to be a researcher at TUM. This is a TUM-specific opportunity. Other universities may have similar schemes. You will need to look at what the universities that you're interested in, what they are offering. There are funding opportunities outside of TUM to visit TUM, like Christian has mentioned a lot of those. There's DAAD, there's the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation. There might be funding organizations in your home country which are sponsoring exchange with other countries, such as Germany. When you're doing this, some considerations you should have in mind, and we may be able to go into more detail than in the Q&A session. Do you want to have a funding which is research or teaching driven? For example, DAAD, they fund a lot of exchanges also which are more teaching driven in addition to the research. Humboldt funds just research driven. And you typically need a host in Germany for these opportunities. And your host should be committed. That's meaning if you apply and then you somehow try to find somebody that you have never talked to before and somehow convince that person to act as a host for you, but the person is not really committed, that may not be very valuable to your application. You should try to find somebody who is really interested in your research, who is committed. So don't just send out cold call emails to people you have never met. If you are an advanced PhD researcher or if you are a postdoc, you will probably know German researchers working in your area. You may have met them at a conference. You may have cited them in your papers. Take that as an entry point so that you get in touch with somebody and get them really interested in your research, so that they will then be enthusiastic and really support strongly your application. Then you will have a good chance. Humboldt, for example, applications have a 30% success rate. But I can tell you, if you're well qualified and you have a dedicated host, the chances are much, much, much higher, because they also get a lot of application. I'm also acting as a reviewer, so I see some of the applications. They also get applications where the hosts are not really dedicated, the application is not well done. Then you're among the 70% that do not get funded. But if you do it well, you have somebody who really wants to work with you in Germany, you should be doing just fine. TUM has also, so I'm moving back now to TUM opportunities. TUM has something called the Global Incentive Fund, which wants to initiate and incentivize bottom-up collaboration among researchers. The funding is not dramatic, it's up to 10,000 euro per project, but the idea is to kickstart research. And again, there needs to be somebody at TUM who is interested in working with you. Then the professor at TUM can apply for a grant from this fund, and then he can bring you as an interested international researcher to Munich for a few weeks visit or so. And that can then be the starting point to work out a more long-range proposal for Humboldt, for DAAD, for Deutsche Forschungsgemeinschaft, or something similar, or even for industry. If you're a bit more advanced, if you already have a faculty position, then TUM has what we call the Global Visiting Professor Program, where we are inviting professors for stays ranging from 1 week up to 3 months, either for research or also for teaching engagements. Again, this is just an example what TUM is offering. Other universities often will have similar schemes. You will need to check with them in detail. And finally, if you're really quite advanced in your career already, TUM has the IAS, the Institute for Advanced Study, where our motto is risking creativity. The idea is this is an institute which brings in great ideas from the outside into TUM. So the IAS recruits fellows, which then have a 3-year fellowship period with TUM, during which time they can come for weekly visits or a few months at a time. And they will get, together with a host at TUM, they will get the funding for a PhD candidate, so that the international professor can work with a TUM professor on a leading edge, high risk, high reward topic, jointly supervising an PhD candidate. So as it says here, this is targeting to drive top-level research at TUM, risking creativity, as we call it. And there are various opportunities for international visitors, especially senior ones. The Hans Fischer Senior Fellowship is an opportunity for more younger, like assistant professors, for example. The Hans Fischer Fellowship are opportunities. Every year, applications are invited. And again, you need a TUM host to apply. So the application is jointly by the international candidate and a TUM host, who, again, should be enthusiastic, because that person also has to write part of the application. So as Wolfgang was saying, people is important. Try to get in touch with researchers in your field from German universities, whether you meet them at conferences, whether you contact them to ask something about their research, about papers that they have written. Once you've established a first contact, that's really very helpful then, when you then start asking them for opportunities to visit. And that brings me already to the end of my presentation. I hope I've given you a little bit of a perspective on what we're doing at TUM and some opportunities, how you can, as an international researcher, get in touch with us and will have a chance to hopefully come to Germany.
Thank you so much, Professor Schlichtmann. You have indeed given us a wonderful overview of the opportunities, and I myself am quite bedazzled by what is available in just one of the over 400 universities that we have across Germany. And just for everybody who's been listening, Professor Schlichtmann was mentioning the Research Opportunities Week at TUM. This, I assume, is an annual event. The deadline for this year is already passed, but I would assume that the same will happen next year, and then the deadline would be in late spring. So you should certainly look up this opportunity.
Yes, actually, it typically happens in March or April. This year it was virtual, so not as exciting as regularly. We are hoping we can return to a physical visit next year. And then the application deadline probably will be sometime in October, actually, and the event then in spring 2022.
Thank you so much. Yes, and we keep receiving messages from the participants, and they are all interested, of course, in the various funding opportunities. And I think, Christian, I probably remember correctly, funding-guide.de is the website that is hosted by the DAAD, where you will find a very good overview of the various scholarship schemes that are available across Germany, including, of course, Technical University of Munich. Now, I know my colleague Jenny is eager to share some information with us, so I'll invite her to just briefly talk to us.
Yes, Susanne, thank you so much for the room. I just wanted to share to those who are still with us because I'm a product actually of research in Germany and scholarships in Germany. I was in Leipzig and I was in Münster. I was with the European Research Center for Information Systems, and also I was part of a Nachwuchsgruppe. So, I mean, if you are not, you are not inspired already, I'm a very good example of how this really works. Not only like having excellent research in Germany, but even how they take care of you even after you do your research. In fact, tomorrow we are going to celebrate the 40th year of the DI Day in the Philippines, and all the alumni will be gathered together. And I'm sure this is like a wonderful way not only to celebrate our research and what we've done, but also to continuously network and to grow also the network in Germany. So thank you so much to Dr. Thorsten Klausing, Professor Wolfgang Müller-Wittig, Professor Ulf Schlichtmann, and Mr. Christian Rabel for sharing research opportunities and avenues for collaboration for ASEAN researchers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jenny. And that is in fact true. There are so many opportunities across Germany that, of course, we have a great network of alumni here in Southeast Asia, and you will find representatives or alumni that have benefited from the various funding schemes of the different institutions, associations, funding agencies that if you reach out to us, we could also put you in touch with them. But I would think the first point of contact, once again, should be the DAD. As Christian was saying, the DAD represents not one specific university, but the German universities in general. So that is your first port of call for information. Now, Professor Schlichtmann, of course, there are people very excited now about the opportunities at TUM, both in Singapore, TUM Create, and in Germany itself. If someone would like to kind of follow up on some of the things that you've mentioned, specifically trying to reach out to a potential supervisor, a host at TUM, how should they navigate it? Is there a particular office that they should kind of make contact with first?
We have an international office, of course, but and you might contact them, but let's say then you're interested, somebody wrote here in the chat, research about flying cars. They would just direct you to the respective professors, if at all. They would, in general, try to answer more general questions. Germany, the research in Germany is driven more by individual professors rather than by, let's say, graduate schools or so. So typically, even if there is a graduate school, you will still apply with a specific professor in your area. So you should check the websites of your target university, who is working in your area, and then contact that person. And as I tried to say before, if it's really then a cold contact, I get these mails as well, where somebody from an area not related to my research at all writes me an email saying, "Oh, Professor, I'm very much interested in your research. I have carefully looked at your website and my skills are a perfect match for you." And then this person works in mechanical engineering or so. I mean, you delete this mail in five nanoseconds, because it's very obvious that person has simply sent this out to hundreds or so of people. No, try to really send a specific mail referencing the research of that person, referencing a specific paper, for example. That improves your chances of actually getting a response. And the more you're able to establish contact, if you're a PhD level researcher, PhD candidate, talk to your supervisor. Does your supervisor know anybody in Germany? That helps to establish contact. When you go to a conference, talk to German participants at the conference. If you're a postdoc already, talk to people in Germany that have cited your research, for example, or that you have cited in your papers. So if there's a little bit of a relation already, that helps greatly once you start sending out emails, that you somehow stick out a little bit from the deluge of emails that people typically get every day. I'm not sure if that's addressing the question, but I hope it's giving a hint at least.
No, I think that is very good advice, because it applies, of course, not just to reaching out to TUM, but also maybe to Fraunhofer or to any other German-based research institution or funding agency. It's important to find a match. You want to complement the work of the person you're trying to work with, and you also want to see that you are an added value to that person. You're not just a burden, but you come with certain skills and certain expertise that your potential supervisor can also benefit from you. And this is kind of a perfect arc that we could draw to a European funding program that is just opening for application today, if everything goes according to plan, which is the MSCA Postdoctoral Fellowship Call, an opportunity to carry out postdoc research in any discipline anywhere in Europe. And of course, Germany is a very popular destination for researchers from across the world, including Southeast Asia, to go to Europe and carry out that fully funded postdoc fellowship there. So as we heard from Professor Schlichtmann, your job now would be to go through the information that has been presented. We will, as I said, share the slides with you. We will share the recording with you, and you will also have all the contact details of the people that have presented and the DAD officers across Southeast Asia, that you can then do your own research, find a good connection, and then reach out and make it happen for you. I think with this, Jenny, if you agree, we have reached the end of today's session in German manner on time. And I would like to thank our presenters. Thank you so much. Once again, there is much more on offer for you, but the key message is Germany is open for you. They're looking for research talent. They're looking to work with you. Please make use of the information and the opportunities, and we're hoping to see you all in Germany very, very soon. So with this, once again, thank you so much, and wishing you all a wonderful afternoon and a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.